Moses died, Joshua get ready to land. Chapter 2, we go across into spy out the land. We meet up with Rahab, who gives us one of the greatest confessions of faith you'll find in the entire Bible. Chapter 3, we cross over the Jordan. Chapter 4, we have the interlude of the stones and the memorial that's going to be set up. Chapter 5, we have Joshua, the reaffirmation of Israel. And then we had the interlude last week where we talked about God and Canaanite warfare. And then now we're about to go into Jericho, the conquest of Jericho. Just to touch base really quickly, the reaffirmation of Israel. Remember, when we get ready, everything is ready. We have the crossing is complete. We have the army is circumcised. We have the reproach of Egypt rolled away. This is all very much getting us ready to take the land. And then, of course, they eat the Passover and the manna ceases. Ooh, I'm sounding good. I like that. Okay, very right time. Okay, so we're about to, like I said, we're about to take Jericho. Any questions, comments up until this point? Okay. Nobody's going to ask me about Canaanite warfare, right? Okay. Just to get really briefly again in our mind what's about to happen here. Joshua is about to conquer. Oh, no wonder I got my pages out of there. Okay. Okay. Joshua has met up with this guy who has his drawn sword. When you're in enemy territory, somebody comes to you with you with a drawn sword. Your question is, who are you? Are you for us or against us? And the individual says, remember this, I'm not for either one of you. I'm the commander of the army of the Lord. Take your shoes off because this is holy ground. And once again, we have the echoes of the burning bush. Joshua did so. I want you to remember that Jericho is a walled city. This obviously is a stylized version of it. And notice chapter 6, verse 1, where we enter now into that chapter. The gates of Jericho are tight to each other. Nobody is out. Nobody is in. Everybody stays put. Why? Why would they do that? Because they've already heard about the Dead Sea. They've already heard about Sihon and Og, according to Rahab. And now, what do they witness from the towers of the city? With Jordan rolling back 47 miles and hundreds of thousands of people moving across. This is serious business. So no wonder everything is tightened up. This is the campaign of Joshua. And I want to point out to you some cool stuff. This is where they're going in. Joshua is going to take Jericho and Ai. Then he's going to go down here, flip up on the southern people, make a loop back around, and go up north. In chapter 6:1, we have the southern campaign. In chapter 10, we have the central campaign, the southern campaign, the northern campaign. Jericho is significant because it is a gateway to the south. It is on a plain, it's centrally located. Ai, which is going to come next, is a gateway to the north. This is very logical, very centrally located. This is important theologically and strategically. Now, I hope you noticed that I said theologically first, because there are several things that are happening here that you need to know about. This is the first fruits of the conquest. First fruits. Does that mean bad? Absolutely it does. Because God has instructed the Israelites, I want you to bring me the first fruits of your crops. Mark did a good job talking about this on the day. He also says, I want you to bring me the firstborn of everything. All your donkeys, all your sheep, all everything. Firstborn. Even your firstborn child, whom you are going to redeem with a fee. So Jericho is the first fruits of this battle. It may indicate why God is saying, I want you to wipe them all out. It's an impossible task. This is an agrarian people. They've now been wandering herdsmen And they're coming upon this huge fortified city. We haven't done this before. I don't know how to fight this. I don't know how to do this. The battle plan is what? Well, let's say nicely that it's unorthodox. You know. This is a major obstacle to the Israelites. And I do want you to know that it's the first hurdle in their conquest. It's the gateway, as we said, to the north and south. So, Joshua standing before Yahweh. We find out later in chapter 6 that this is Yahweh. This is not just an angel. This is God himself. And Yahweh says, I want you, Joshua, I want you to do this for your battle plan. We can almost see Joshua ready. Joshua the leader. Joshua who has already fought in several battles. Joshua the military guy. And Yahweh says, when you get there, I want you to tromp around the city 6 times. 1 every day. Until the 7th day, and then you tromp around the city 7 times. No shouting, no yelling, no nothing. Blow the trumpets. Take the ark with you. And Joshua, the military dude, is sitting there saying what? Can you see Dwight Eisenhower on D-Day? And Yahweh says, look, I want you to sit up on the beaches and I want you to march around. It's okay, I'll take care of the Germans. This ain't war. But this is the battle plan. When you hear the sound of the long blast, the whole army is to give a shout. The wall is going to fall. This is not right. This is not how you do it in the army. This ain't gonna work. Joshua never says that, never expresses that, never has a way from down there. So he says, okay, guys, let's go. Have I got a battle plan for you, and you're going to love it. So if you're sitting there, you're the infantry dude, you got your sword sharpened, you got your spear sharpened, you got everything ready, you got your armor, everything checks out, and God says, I want you to, no, you're going to love this battle plan. And so Joshua says exactly what Yahweh says. And it's interesting how this plays out because the pattern always is for Yahweh to speak to Joshua. Joshua speaks to the priest speak to the army. This was something I thought that I didn't notice before. There's an armed guard to march in front of the priests. The priests come along behind. They have the trumpets, and they also have the Ark of the Covenant, or the very symbol, the very essence of the presence of Yahweh. And then behind them comes the army. Now I love this. I ran across this watercolor. Isn't it cool? Austin Calhoun painted this in 1718 or thereabouts. He sold for $325. Man, I'd give him at least 60 for it. But anyway, what I like about it is that it shows maybe the vast, extensive part of the army. They almost encircled Jericho, which, by the way, is set up as a little French town, down there, just kind of really quaint. And so everybody, but what really is cool is they have this front guard, they have the trumpets of the priests, and right there, you could almost miss it, is the ark. And then the remainder of the army behind. So Calvin had it pretty good. How big was Jericho? Well, the big theological entry is, oh no. I've seen estimates as low as 300. Seen estimates as high as 40,000. You know that the archaeological site is 7 acres. There's an interesting passage in chapter 10. After the Gibeonites have made the deal with Joshua, we'll talk about them in chapter 8. The kings of the surrounding area say, we got to do something about this. And it said that Gibeon was one of the major cities, like one of the royal cities. And it's not said this about Jericho. So it just wonder, maybe Jericho was not as huge as we might think it be, but it was significantly important. want you to march around the city 7 times. There's a lot of stuff going on with 7. God created the heavens and earth in 7 days. And on the 7th day, he rested. And you're almost, this could not have been unimportant to the Israelites. They had to get it. And you can almost see these reflections, this thought process. 7th day, God rested. And we're going to enter the land. God's going to give us rest. This is going to happen on the Sabbath type day. 7 priests, 7 trumpets, sense of creation and Sabbath. What have we just done, by the way, that we talked about in chapter 5? We eaten the Passover. And maybe the Bible scholars say, well, Laura, you say Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread. Oh. In fact, sometimes as you read in the scripture, the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread is crammed together. Passover first, Feast of Unleavened Bread for 7 days. Shows consecration. There's no leaven in the house. It's to be cleaned out. And so the Israelites are marching in on this consecrated feast. 7 days. Noah had 7 pairs of clean animals. Noah had a Sabbath came every 7 days. He was slaves for 47 years. There's more and more and more of this. But to get the picture and idea that this 7th thing is pretty important to Joshua, more importantly to Yahweh. Any questions or comments, thoughts on it? I can tell that you're impressed. I was. Okay. The battle plan. The battle plan is not a battle plan. It's a religious ritual. This is a worship thing going on. And let's face it, folks, you're going to battle and march around the enemy 7 times. Yahweh is leading this thing. Yahweh is in the middle of it. And Yahweh says, see, I have given the land, sea, its king, into your hands. That had to sound good to Joshua. So, they did for 6 days. And then on the 7th day, marched around the 7th time. Can you imagine being in Jericho, being the watch guards? You're looking out there, and they're thinking, what? First day happened. Second day happened. Yeah. Third day? More of the same. 7th day, along about 10 o'clock in the morning, they're saying, something happening here. This is different today. They trump around. They blow the trumpets. Shout for the Lord is near the city. And he did. We pause the narrative. It's kind of interesting because the writer of Joshua has done this to us like 2 or 3 times. He puts the priests in the middle of the Jordan, and then he pauses the narrative to say, by the way, here's what these stones are all about. And then you have them getting ready to go over into Jordan, and we put it on pause and say, by the way, this commander of the army of the Lord needs to talk to Joshua first. And then we're getting ready, we trump around, we're getting ready, we shout, and it's like, oh, by the way. It's like, please, spare us. So this is the second or third time this has happened. It just kind of gives you an idea. The Bible, folks, is great literary stuff. It is magnificent literature. The book of Esther is unparalleled in its bobs and weaves and tensions. It's just, this is amazing. So, on chapter 6, verse 17, we've already marched out, we're getting ready to shout, and then comes, oh, wait, here we go. It gives us this long excursus on the band, being devoted, being given over to Yahweh, those 2 or 3 things that we talked about in the Hearn of God. He says, everything in it is devoted to Yahweh. It's going to be destroyed. You, however, you're going to take care of Rahab, because you promised you would, and she expressed her faith in Israel. Now, here's the big thing. But keep away from the devoted things. What might that be? Everything. So that you do not bring about your own destruction by taking any of them. Otherwise, you will make the camp of Israel liable to Hearn and bring trouble on them. And long about this time, if we were watching an old detective movie, we would hear the note, dun 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 dun. Because we're setting you up for what's about to happen in chapter 7. But it's important, just apart from all the drama there. Don't mess with the devoted things. Otherwise, you're going to be bringing trouble on yourself and on the camp. Now, what would that mean? Apparently, this Hearn thing was kind of like contagious, at least in this instance. If you messed with this, if you took it, you became part of the Hearn. You became part of the destruction and the devotion. Of course, now, you've read Joshua enough to know what's about to happen, but it's really interesting that we pause the action to say, right, all the silver and gold, the articles, bronze and iron that are sacred to the Lord must go into the treasury. Everything else is to be killed, and everything else is to be burned. Pretty stuff. So the wall collapsed. Everyone charged straight in. They took the city. They devoted the city to Yahweh and destroyed with the sword everything in it, then men, women, young and old, cattle, sheep, and donkeys, fulfilling the promise of Yahweh. See, I've given everything into your hands. And what's really intriguing to me is that if we were putting this into a movie or whatever, we would really play this out. We would really do that. And the walls came down, there was a mighty roar. And watch out, here comes the stones and the people that says, this is it. This is all there is in the battle. And it had to be dramatic. So the big question is, how did Rahab survive with her house being on the wall and the walls fell in? I don't know. The short answer is probably not all pieces of the wall fell. Her house was probably, see, this is a double thing wall. Probably her house was sitting around here like on that big thing right there or something like that. And so everything didn't fall. We know that Yahweh protected her and kept his promise. Joshua told the two guys, okay, fellas, you made a promise, keep it. Go in there, you find it. Notice this is the two guys who went in. We're going to know who this lady is. We're going to know where she is. And we're going to know what the promise is. We're going to know what to look for. We're going to start a court. So you go in and you take her. Notice who all's with her. She brought her father, her mother, her brothers, her sisters, and all who belong to her. I wonder there was standing room only in that house. They brought her out to the camp, to her family, a place outside the camp. Well, that is rude. I mean, here we are. We've betrayed our people. We've given up our lifestyle. We've given up everything. And you're sticking us outside the camp of Israel. Why would you do that? It's just rude, isn't it? Just rude. Before we get into that, let's remember that sister. Shall call her sister. Yes, we shall. The first passage is from Matthew chapter 1. Solomon, the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab, and so forth and so on. If you recognize that from Matthew chapter 1, you recognize that Rahab, the prostitute, the Canaanite prostitute, is in the lineage of Jesus. By the way, if you ever read, don't skip over that chapter 1, lineage of Jesus. Read that thing. You stumble through those names. It's important. And you will find there's several unsavory characters there, not the least of which is Manasseh, who I think is one of the worst kings Israel ever had. But there she is. By faith, Hebrews 11, the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, would not give along with those who were disobedient. touched on this, that the Canaanites apparently had some element, significance, awareness of the worship of Yahweh, and rejected it. There she is, right in the middle of a whole list of characters that we find amazing. Abraham, Noah, and Moses, and so forth and so on. And there she is. The next one is in James 2. What is so interesting about James, who is talking about works versus faith, and that Rahab's faith led her to action, is that he mentions her in practically the same breath as Abraham. We know that Abraham was a man of faith because he had these works. In the same way, he says, Rahab, the prostitute. How dare you? Here's the great father of the faithful, Abraham himself. Can you mention him and her in the same breath? That just ain't right. And yet there she is. Who thoughts on Sister Rahab before we go? Okay. She's sitting out by the camp. Death and destruction and dismay are all around her. The family is wondering what's going on. How this happened? What about our people? What about our friends? What about our way of life? What about our bank account? Our IRA? What about everything? Everything's gone. Except Yahweh and Israel. So why did they put her outside the camp? Well, they may not know what to do with her. Who she is? What are we going to do? Canaanite prostitute, loves Yahweh. Now what do we do? Maybe they want to protect her. The Israelites are in war. And it's okay. There she is. There's guards around her. Don't mess with that. Ceremonial uncleanness. She wasn't a Canaanite prostitute. What about her male relatives? Were they circumcised? I doubt it. So maybe there's a little issue there we got to deal with. So whatever, there are several reasons that it could have been. Joshua spared Rahab and her family, and they live here to this day. So whoever is writing the book of Joshua, or finishing it off here, probably Joshua wrote a lot of it, but he says, they're here to this day. She's here with us. It's really interesting because Rahab has now become Israelite. She's no longer Rahab the Canaanite.
Joshua 6.
Absolutely.
The gates of Jericho.
So she's now an Israelite. She's part of the family. I don't know, is that the way it's supposed to work today? That somebody who comes in amongst us, regardless of their horrible background, shall be one of us? You know the answer. Well, the ban of Hearn was to be permanent. Joshua pronounces this curse. First before Yahweh is the one who undertakes to rebuild the city of Jericho. At the cost of his firstborn son, he will lay its foundations. At the cost of his wisdom, set up its gates. Several hundred years later, in the time of Ahab, okay, go say, boo, Ahab. Okay, at Ahab's time, high on the Bethelite, that is from Bethel, decides, this is a great place. There's springs here. It's a centrally located city to the south, to the north. This is a good thing. Why are we letting all this rubble, this building material go to waste? We get a few bulldozers in here, clean out the mess, hike up these stones, and we can rebuild this place and have a great central city. I don't know what's going on in the man's mind. must remember at Ahab's time that they have already departed from Yahweh, so maybe he was unfamiliar with Joshua's code. I don't know. But he heard nothing. And the writer king says, when he started, his firstborn died. And when he finished, his youngest died. That's bad enough even on the surface, but back then, that was your heritage. That was your all. The firstborn. The one in whom you gave the ultimate blessing, and the youngest. It's gone. In accordance with the word of Yahweh, spoken by Joshua, son of Nun. And then intriguing several hundred years later. Yes, sir.
I want to go back to the point you made earlier about Rahab. What do you do with Rahab?
Yeah.
I think Satan's done he has successfully taken us down that same path. Because the truth of the matter is, I don't know how many, maybe got 300 families in Textual. I don't know what the number is. Guess what? We've got 300 families that are broken. In whatever ways. We've got dysfunctionality. We're all sinners. And so for us to ask, what do we do with Rahab? I mean, who kidding? You know, and so the more we're transparent and the more that we're honest, the more we're going to draw people to Jesus through us, through our brokenness. And so I just find it interesting. Yes, the point, I get it, Rahab, but again, wow. Shame on us.
Yeah. And folks, all we have to do is look in the mirror, think back a few years, a few months, or a few hours. The good news, and it is good news, is that any of us are not going to get it all. That's great.
By the grace of God.
Anybody else? You scratch your nose. You got a comment? No. Okay. Anybody else? Okay.
You know, Harvey, it is a little stressful, I think, if you're one of the camp or whatever, one of the settlers saying, wow, we're going to go and all this, we're going to start from scratch. We're going to go on top of ashes. I mean, we're not really anything. You know, it's kind of stressful. By the way, you told us a few pages ago that, well, when we go here, we'll be eating things we didn't plant, everything else we didn't do. Well, I don't see that. We're utterly destroying everything like that.
Yeah.
I think it was even stressful to be in a crowd, even if you're a paper like this. Even though God clearly laid it out, it's still stressful when what do we do?
Yep. It had to be very sobering to go in and see that slaughter or to participate in that slaughter.
And we've got 15 or 20 more, or I don't know, we got this whole area we got to this.
Yeah, we'll get that in about chapter 11, 12. We're about, I think, about 30 kings. So, anybody else? Now, let's see. It was Jonathan, I think, last week that said, what is this about? In Deuteronomy 7 is the war code for the Israelites. When Yahweh your God has delivered them over to you and you defeat them, you must destroy them totally. You do not make no treaty with them, show them no mercy. Do not intermarry with them. But, excuse me? We're going to like kill them all, right? No, don't intermarry with them. Don't give your daughters from your sons, or take your daughters from your sons. Turn your children away from following me to serve their gods, and the Lord's anger will burn against you and will quickly destroy you. I thought we were going to kill them all. Why are you telling us about marrying them and don't intermingle with them and so forth and so on? So, you know. Something seems like you're right. You're going to run across a little phrase to this day, several times. Rahab have in family are Canaanites. They worship Canaanite gods. And yet they live with the Israelites to this day, Joshua said, or forever. So it's kind of like, now the mom and dad and you know, brothers and sisters and friends, did they repent and be baptized? I mean, are they part of the deal, or did they really have a soft spot in their heart for Chumash, you know, and obey? The Gibeonites in Joshua 8, those stinking Gibeonites, they just lied and everything, but they made a treaty with Joshua. And the Gibeonites are here to this day. In Joshua 13, there's large areas to be taken. And then we read of Geshur and Maacah in chapter 13, which is apparently supposed to be pretty important. We have the Jebusites, Jerusalem, in chapter 15, that have not been taken and would not be driven out until the days of David, several hundred years later. We have Gezer, where all the old guys live, in Joshua 16. And in chapter 17, the Canaanites are strong. So this thing, you know, is ideally we're going to destroy them all. But in reality, I know you guys aren't going to get to the job. Or what do we have going on? All I know is to this day, we got some Canaanites hanging out. He says, you need to be careful.
So the people that say Rahab and her, all that was with her, they were still considered Canaanites, and they were not allowed to, the Israelites were not allowed to marry her people?
I'm thinking that she and her family are Israelites at this point, period. I'm just casting that as a possibility that, you know, maybe Uncle Fred still kind of likes male. You know, I don't know that. I just say there is this opportunity for contamination. Let's put it that way. So I think there is a lot of stuff. I think that's what is happening. In chapter 23, Joshua gives amongst his last speeches this. If you turn away and ally yourselves with the survivors of these nations, what? But I don't make the news, I just report it. If you ally yourselves with the survivors of these nations among you, if you intermarry with them and associate with them, then you may be sure that the Lord your God will no longer drive out these nations before you. Instead, there will come snares and traps for you, whips on your backs, thorns in your eyes. Well, that sounds like fun. Until you perish from this good land which the Lord your God has given you. See, this is one of the reasons I talked to you about Joshua being pivotal in the covenant and in the living out of that covenant. Because you know biblical history well enough to know what's happened, or what did happen. In 721 BC, after the division of the kingdom, the Assyrians gobbled up the northern kingdom. 586 BC, the Babylonians gobbled up the southern kingdom. The land vomited them out just as it vomited out the Canaanites. So Yahweh was with Joshua, the last verse of the chapter says. This famous great threat for me. Joshua is once again reaffirmed as God's leader and man of the hour. Be of good courage. Chapter 7, verse 1 begins with, you always know what that means. There's some bad news coming. We'll pick up on that next week with the story of Achan and the city of Ai, or Ai. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Whatever. Yeah, it's me.
To me, it was always such a contradiction that God's telling them, do not intermarry with these idolaters. And Israel over and over and over again. They go back to the idolatry. Solomon gives in to his wives and the idolatry too. And yet we have a Moabite, Ruth, who also is an ancestor of Jesus, and yet that family has intermarried completely. 3 sons and 3 the daughters-in-law, they're all Moabites. And so it's kind of just a contradiction here. I mean, you can see the idolatry and the going on over and over because of those people, and yet Ruth comes in and she becomes a follower of Yahweh. So and of course, even in the New Testament, widows are to marry in the Lord.
So, there you
No answer.
It's
Like-
very simple, nobody learned.
Right.
No matter what happened, nobody learned.
That's what's so frustrating about the book of Judges, isn't it? As we get to see young Joshua now that he's working and living out in the covenant, kind of like, and again, Israel did what was evil inside of the Lord. How many times was it repeated? You know, and I sit there and I scoff, I laugh, or I say, "What is wrong with you guys?" And I go and look in the mirror and I say, "What is wrong with you, Harvey?"
So it shows God's patience. We're still here. I mean, the human race is still here.
Is still here. And once again, to loop back to Joshua, the Canaanites had 400 years of percolating before Yahweh's wrath came upon them. Okay, thanks guys, appreciate you.
Don't have it.
Finishing up my personal assistance.